I got to the hospital at 6 in the morning. The parking lot was still dark, just a few scattered cars under the yellow lights, and the air had that raw spring cold that gets into your coat. I had the blanket with me, the one I'd been working on since Michael called to tell me Jessica was pregnant. Soft yellow yarn, a pattern I'd done 100 times. I'd finished the last row the night before, woven in the ends while I watched the clock. I didn't sleep. I'd been awake since 3, running through everything I wanted to say when I met my grandson. The private things, the promises you make when no one else is listening. I wanted to tell him about his grandfather, about the man he'd never meet but who would have loved him completely. I wanted to tell him I'd be there. The lobby was too bright, all white floors and fluorescent lights. I signed in, got a visitor sticker and took the elevator to the maternity floor. My hands were shaking. I was about to meet the first grandchild I'd ever have. Michael was my only child. This was the moment I'd been imagining for months. The waiting room was at the end of the hall, and I could see Michael before he saw me. He was standing near the window with a paper coffee cup in his hand, staring out at nothing. He looked exhausted. His shirt was wrinkled and his hair was sticking up on one side the way it used to when he was a teenager, and slept too hard. I felt that old pull, the one that makes you want to smooth down your child's hair no matter how old he gets. I called his name. He turned and I saw his face change, not into a smile, into something else, something careful. He walked over to me and I held up the blanket, still folded, the yellow bright against my coat. I said, "I made it just in time." He looked at the blanket. He looked at me. He said, "Mum." Just that. Just my name, in a voice that meant trouble. I waited. He glanced back toward the hallway, toward the room where Jessica was, and then he looked at me again. He said, "Jessica's mum is here." I said, I know. You told me she was coming." He nodded. He took a sip of his coffee, even though I could tell he didn't want it. He was buying time. I'd seen him do this since he was 8 years old, when he'd broken the neighbour's window with a baseball and had to tell me about it. He said, "Jessica wants it to be just close family right now." I didn't understand at first. I thought he meant in the delivery room, which I'd never expected to be part of anyway. I said, "That's fine. I'll wait out here." He shook his head. He still wasn't looking at me. He said, "She means in the waiting area too. She's really stressed and she just wants her mum close by. She doesn't want a crowd." I looked around the waiting room. There were 3 other people in it, all of them half asleep in the plastic chairs. It wasn't a crowd. I said, "I'm not a crowd, Michael. I'm your mother." He flinched. He said, "I know, but it's her day. It's her choice." I felt something cold move through my chest, something that didn't have a name yet. I said, "Her mother is immediate family, but I'm not?" He didn't answer that. He just looked miserable. I stood there holding the blanket, and I realized a nurse at the desk was watching us. She was pretending not to, but I could see her eyes flicking over every few seconds. I wondered what she thought was happening. I wondered if she'd seen this before. I said, "You're asking me to leave?" Michael said, "Just for now. Just until things calm down. I'll call you as soon as he's born, I promise." I wanted to ask him if he remembered that I was the one who'd sat with him in a hospital when he was 19 and had his appendix out, who'd stayed all night even though the nurses said I didn't have to, but I didn't ask. I held out the blanket. I said, "Give this to him. Tell him his grandmother made it." Michael took it. His hands were shaking too, I noticed. He said, "Thank you. It's really nice." I turned and walked back toward the elevator. I didn't let myself look back. I didn't let myself cry. Not there, not in front of the nurse who was still watching. I pressed the button and waited, and the elevator took forever. And when it finally came, I stepped inside and watched the doors close on my son standing in the hallway with my blanket in his hands. I made it to my car before I cried. I sat there in the cold parking lot with my keys in my lap, and I cried the way you cry when you're 68 years old and you've learned that crying doesn't fix anything, but sometimes you have to do it anyway. The rain started, small cold drops on the windshield, sliding down in crooked lines. I'd imagined holding my grandson. I'd imagined taking a picture with him, one I could frame and put on the mantel. I'd imagined Michael looking at me with gratitude, with the kind of pride that says, This is my mother, and I'm glad she's here. Instead, I'd been sent away. I started the car. I turned on the wipers. I drove home through the rain, and I didn't let myself think about anything except the road in front of me, because if I thought about anything else, I was going to have to pull over again. My house was quiet when I got home. It's always quiet, but that morning it felt different, heavier. I set my purse on the kitchen table and stood there for a minute, still wearing my coat, still feeling the cold from the parking lot, even though the heat was on. The house is small. A ranch I bought after Tom died, something I could manage on my own. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that gets good light in the mornings. I'd sold the house we raised Michael in, the one with the big backyard and the porch Tom built the summer before his heart gave out. I didn't need all that space anymore. I needed something I could afford on a librarian's pension and social security. I took off my coat. I made coffee I didn't want. I sat down at the table and looked at my hands. They were steady now. That surprised me. I thought about Michael's house, the split level in the new development, the one with the 2-car garage and the HOA fees and the lawn service they couldn't quite afford. Jessica had fallen in love with it the first time they looked. She'd sent me pictures, texted me links to the listing. She'd said it was perfect. She'd said it was everything they wanted. Michael's credit score wasn't high enough to qualify for the mortgage on his own. He'd had some trouble in his 20s, a few missed payments on a car loan, a credit card he'd let go to collections when he was between jobs. He'd cleaned it up, but it took time. The bank wanted a co-signer. He'd asked me over dinner, just the 2 of us, at the diner near my old house a week before I moved. He'd been nervous. He'd said they really wanted this house, that it was in a good school district, that they were planning to start a family soon. He'd said he knew it was a lot to ask. I'd said yes before he finished asking. I'd gone to the bank with him, signed the papers, smiled at the loan officer who explained my obligations. I understood what I was signing. I'd spent 40 years organising information, cataloguing risk, reading the fine print on overdue notices. I knew what a co-signer was responsible for. I knew what could happen if Michael couldn't pay. But he was my son, and he'd promised he'd pay. The down payment came later. Jessica had found the furniture she wanted for the nursery, even though she wasn't pregnant yet. She'd shown me pictures on her phone, scrolling through them fast, her voice bright with excitement. The crib was $800. The changing table was $400. The rocker was $600. She'd said they were going to save up for it, but it might take a while. I'd transferred the money the next day, $1,800 from my savings account to theirs. I'd told myself it was an investment in my future grandson. I'd told myself it was what grandmothers did. Michael had called to thank me. He'd said it was just a loan, that they'd pay me back as soon as Jessica's maternity leave was over and she went back to work. He'd said he'd put it in writing if I wanted. I'd said that wasn't necessary. I'd said I trusted him. He'd sent me a promissory note anyway, a week later. A piece of paper with his signature at the bottom, dated and witnessed by Jessica. It said he owed me $1,800 to be repaid in monthly installments, starting 6 months after the baby was born. I'd put it in my file drawer and forgotten about it. Now I got up from the table and went to the drawer. I keep my files the way I kept the library archives. Everything labelled and sorted, everything in its place. Taxes in one folder, medical records in another, house documents in a third. I found the folder marked Michael and pulled it out. The promissory note was on top. Under it was a copy of the mortgage documents, the ones I'd signed at the bank. I read through them slowly the way I used to read through acquisition contracts when the library was buying new materials. I looked at the numbers. I looked at the terms. I looked at my name next to Michael's, both of us equally responsible for a $300,000 loan. I wasn't on the deed. Jessica and Michael owned the house, but I was on the loan. If they didn't pay, the bank would come to me. I sat there with the papers spread out in front of me, and I thought about the nursery furniture. I thought about the baby shower I'd been invited to, the one where I'd sat at a table with Jessica's second cousins and her co-workers from the dental office where she did billing. I'd brought a gift, a set of baby books I'd picked out carefully, classics I'd read to Michael when he was small. Jessica had opened it in front of everyone, smiled, said thank you, and set it aside. Later, I'd seen it on the gift table, still in its wrapping, pushed to the back behind the bigger boxes. I thought about the gender reveal party I hadn't been invited to. I'd found out they were having a boy from a Facebook post Jessica made, a picture of blue confetti and her hands on her belly. I thought about Michael's birthday last year, the dinner at their house where I'd brought a cake and stayed for 2 hours. Jessica had taken pictures the whole time, posed shots of her and Michael, candid shots of her mother laughing at the table. I'd offered to be in one. Jessica had said, "Oh, we got plenty, thanks." I'd looked at her Instagram later that night, 43 pictures from the party. I wasn't in any of them. I'd told myself it didn't matter. I'd told myself Jessica was just excited, just focused on her own family. I'd told myself I was being sensitive. Now I looked at the mortgage documents and the promissory note, and I realized something I should have seen a long time ago. I'd been useful. I'd been a co-signer, and a checkbook and a backup plan. But I hadn't been family. I put the papers back in the folder. I put the folder back in the drawer. I sat at the table and drank my coffee, which had gone cold, and I thought about the yellow blanket I'd knitted, the one that was still in Michael's car, or maybe already in the nursery, draped over the expensive rocker I'd paid for. I wondered if Jessica would let the baby use it. I wondered if she'd tell him his grandmother made it. I wondered if I'd ever find out. The text came 2 weeks later. I was in the garden pulling weeds from around the tomato plants I'd put in too early. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I almost didn't check it. But I did. It was a photo, the baby wrapped in a blue blanket I didn't recognize, his face scrunched up and red. Under the photo, just 2 words from Michael: "He's here." I sat back on my heels and looked at the picture. My grandson. I zoomed in, trying to see his features, trying to find Tom in his face, trying to find Michael. He just looked like a baby, small and new and perfect. I texted back, "He's beautiful. When can I meet him?" I waited. The 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then, nothing. I went back to weeding. I told myself he was busy, new fathers were always busy. 3 days later, I texted again. "Thinking of you all. Let me know when you're ready for visitors." The reply came 6 hours later. "Jessica's still recovering. We'll let you know." I read it twice. I put the phone down. I made dinner. I ate alone the way I always did, and I tried not to think about the fact that Jessica's mother was probably at that house right now, probably holding the baby, probably being useful. A week after that, Margaret called. Margaret had worked at the library with me for 20 years before we both retired. She'd been at the hospital that morning, visiting her daughter who'd just had gallbladder surgery. She'd seen me in the waiting room. She'd seen Michael send me away. She didn't ask what happened. She told me what she thought about it, and her language was colourful enough that I had to hold the phone away from my ear. When she was done, I said, "It's complicated." She said, "It's not complicated. It's cruel." I didn't argue with her. I said I was handling it. She said, "How?" I said, "I'm thinking." That was true. I'd been thinking for 2 weeks. I'd been thinking while I weeded the garden and washed the dishes and folded laundry that only I wore. I'd been thinking about the baby shower. It had been at Jessica's mother's house, a big colonial in a neighborhood nicer than mine. Jessica had invited 40 people. I'd arrived on time, brought a gift I'd wrapped carefully, and found my name card at a table in the back corner. I was sitting with 2 of Jessica's second cousins and 3 women from her office. Nice women, strangers. The family table was up front, near where Jessica sat opening gifts. Her mother was there, her sister, her aunts. Michael was there too, standing behind Jessica's chair, smiling for photos. I'd told myself it was fine. I'd told myself there wasn't enough room at the family table. I'd told myself I was being oversensitive. But I'd watched Jessica open my gift, the set of baby books I'd chosen so carefully. She'd smiled, said thank you, and set it aside. Later, when I was leaving, I'd seen it on the gift table, pushed to the back behind a diaper bag shaped like an elephant and a baby monitor that looked like it cost more than my car payment. I thought about the gender reveal party I'd found out about on Facebook, Blue confetti and Jessica's hands on her belly and a caption that said, "Our little man is on the way." 43 comments. I'd added mine. "Congratulations, so happy for you both." Jessica had liked it. She hadn't invited me to the party. I thought about Michael's birthday last year. I'd brought a cake, chocolate with vanilla frosting, the kind he'd loved since he was 6. I'd stayed for 2 hours. Jessica had taken pictures the whole time, her phone always up, always clicking. She'd posed with Michael. She'd posed with her mother. She'd taken a group shot of everyone at the table. I'd asked if she wanted one with me in it. She'd said, "Oh, we got plenty, thanks." I'd looked at her Instagram that night. I'd scrolled through 43 photos from the party. 43. I wasn't in any of them. I'd told myself it didn't matter. I'd told myself Jessica was just excited about her own family. I'd told myself I was being too sensitive, that I was reading into things, that I needed to let it go. Now I sat in my kitchen with Margaret on the phone, and I realised I'd been telling myself a lot of things that weren't true. Margaret said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know yet." But I was starting to get an idea. I'd been erased, not all at once, not with any single cruelty I could point to and say, "Look, this is wrong." Just slowly, carefully. A seat at the wrong table. An invitation that never came. A photo I wasn't in. A waiting room I wasn't allowed to stay in. I'd been useful when they needed money. I'd been useful when they needed a co-signer. I'd been useful when they needed furniture for a nursery. But I hadn't been family. Margaret was still talking, saying something about how I should tell Michael exactly what I thought of him. How I should make him understand what he'd done. I said, "I'll handle it." She said, "Promise me you won't just let this go." I looked at the file drawer across the kitchen, the one with the mortgage documents and the promissory note. I said, "I promise." After I hung up, I sat there for a long time. I thought about the baby, the one I'd seen for 30 seconds in a photo. I thought about the blanket I'd knitted, the one that was probably in the nursery right now, draped over the rocker I'd paid for. I thought about what it would be like to never meet him, to never hold him, to never tell him about his grandfather. Then I thought about what it had been like to stand in that hospital parking lot in the rain, holding my keys, feeling like I didn't matter. I got up, I made tea, I sat back down at the table, and I started thinking about what came next. The message came on a Thursday afternoon. I was at the grocery store when my phone buzzed. "Michael, hey Mum, quick question. Would you be able to babysit starting next month? Jessica's going back to work part-time and daycare is crazy expensive. Thinking maybe 3 days a week. Let me know." I read it 3 times. Not, "How are you?" Not, "I'm sorry about the hospital." Not, "Would you like to meet your grandson?" Just, "Would you be able to babysit?" I finished my shopping. I drove home. I didn't respond. The message sat on my phone like a stone, 3 days a week. That was what they needed from me now. That was when I became family again. Instead of calling Michael, I called the mortgage company. The woman who answered was efficient. I explained I was a co-signer on a loan and wanted to understand my options. She transferred me to the loan department. I asked if it was possible to remove myself as a co-signer. Yes, under certain conditions. The primary borrower would need to refinance in their own name. They'd need to qualify based on income and credit score. I asked what would happen if they couldn't qualify. Then the co-signer would remain on the loan unless the property was sold or the loan was paid off. I asked if I had legal standing to request payment history. Yes. As a co-signer, I was equally responsible. I had a right to know if payments were being made on time. I thanked him and hung up. I sat at my kitchen table with my hands folded in front of me, the way I used to sit at the reference desk when a patron asked a question I needed to think about carefully. I wasn't planning revenge. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't planning to hurt Michael or take his house or ruin his life. I was planning clarity. For 2 years, I'd been on that loan. For 2 years, my name had been tied to a house I didn't own, a debt I hadn't created, a risk I'd taken because my son asked me to. I'd signed those papers because I trusted him, because I loved him, because I thought that's what mothers did, but mothers were also supposed to be allowed to meet their grandchildren. I picked up my phone. I texted back, "I need to talk to you and Jessica in person before I commit to anything." The reply came in less than a minute. "Sure, come by Sunday around 2?" I stared at that message. Less than a minute. For 2 weeks, I'd waited days for responses. I'd sent photos of the baby with no context. I'd been put off and dismissed and told to wait. But now, when they needed something, the response came in less than a minute. I texted back, "I'll be there." I put the phone down. I went to the file drawer and pulled out the mortgage documents again. I read through them one more time, making sure I understood exactly what I'd signed, exactly what I was responsible for, exactly what my options were. I'd spent 40 years as a librarian. I knew how to research. I knew how to find information. I knew how to read the fine print. And I knew how to protect myself. Sunday came. I drove to Michael's house, the split level in the development with the HOA fees and the 2-car garage. I parked in the driveway behind Jessica's car. I walked up to the front door and knocked. Michael answered. He looked tired. His hair needed cutting and there were circles under his eyes. He smiled when he saw me, a smile that looked relieved. He said, "Hey, Mom, come in." The house smelled like baby. That specific smell of formula and diapers and something sweet I couldn't name. I followed Michael into the living room and there was Jessica on the couch with the baby in her arms. He was awake. His eyes were open, dark blue and unfocused, looking at nothing and everything. He was wearing a white onesie with little bears on it. He was perfect. I said, "Can I hold him?" Jessica looked at Michael. Michael looked at Jessica. Then Jessica said, "Sure, just for a minute. He needs to eat soon." She handed him to me, and I sat down in the armchair, the one I'd helped pay for, and I held my grandson for the first time. He was warm and solid, and impossibly small. His hand curled around my finger. I looked at his face and tried to find Tom in it, tried to find Michael, tried to find myself. He just looked like himself, brand new. I said, "What's his name?" Michael said, Owen Thomas." Thomas, Tom's name. They'd used Tom's name. I felt something crack in my chest, something that had been holding solid for 2 weeks. Jessica said, "Okay, I need to feed him now." I'd been holding him for less than 10 minutes. I handed him back. Jessica took him and disappeared down the hallway toward the nursery. I heard a door close. Michael sat down on the couch. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and said, "So, about the babysitting." I looked at him. I said, "Tell me what you need." He explained. Jessica's maternity leave was unpaid. They'd been living on his salary alone for 6 weeks, and it was tight. She was going back to work part-time, 3 days a week, starting in 2 weeks. Daycare was $1,800 a month, and they couldn't afford it. Not right now. Not with the mortgage and the car payments and everything else. He didn't say they were behind on the mortgage, but I already knew they were. I'd called the loan department again on Friday. I'd asked about the payment history. The woman had told me they were 60 days late. Michael said, "We really need your help, Mom, just until we get back on our feet." I said, "How long do you think that will be?" He said, "I don't know, a few months maybe. Jessica's hoping to go full-time by the end of the year." I said, "And you'd need me 3 days a week?" He said, "Yeah, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays. We'd bring him to your place in the morning and pick him up after work." I said, "What about Jessica's mother?" Michael looked uncomfortable. He said, "She works full-time. She can't do it." I said, "But she was at the hospital." Michael said, "She took the day off." I let that sit there between us. Then I said, "Why wasn't I allowed to stay at the hospital, Michael?" He looked at his hands. He said, "Jessica was stressed. She wanted her mom." I said, "I'm your mother." He said, "I know, but it was her day, her choice." I said, "And now it's my choice." He looked up at me. He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I mean I need to think about whether I'm available to babysit. I'll let you know." Michael's face changed. He said, "Mum, we're really counting on you." I stood up. I said, "I'll let you know." Jessica came back into the room, the baby on her shoulder. She said, "So, we're all set for the babysitting." I said, "I'm thinking about it." Jessica's smile tightened. She said, "What's there to think about? You've been saying you're lonely. This'll be good for you. You'll get to spend time with Owen." I looked at her. I said, "I wanted to spend time with Owen 2 weeks ago, at the hospital." Jessica's face went smooth. She said, "I needed my mum. It wasn't personal." I said, "It felt personal." She said, "Well, it wasn't. And now we're asking you to be part of Owen's life. Isn't that what you wanted?" I said, "I wanted to be part of his life from the beginning." Michael said, "Mum, come on. Don't make this difficult." I picked up my purse. I said, "I'm not making anything difficult. I'm just saying I need to think about it. I'll call you in a few days." I walked to the door. Michael followed me. He said, "We really need an answer soon. Jessica goes back to work in 2 weeks." I said, "I understand." I got in my car, I drove home, and I didn't call them back. Michael called on Tuesday. I didn't answer. He called again on Wednesday. I let it go to voicemail. The voicemail said, "Mum, we really need to know about the babysitting. Jessica goes back to work in 10 days. Can you call me back?" I didn't call back. On Thursday, he called twice. I was in the garden both times, my hands in the dirt, planting marigolds along the fence. I heard the phone ring from inside the house. I kept planting. On Friday, I called him back. I said, "I'm not available to babysit." There was a long silence. Then Michael said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I mean I'm not available." He said, "Why not?" I said, "I'm not immediate family. Jessica made that clear." Another silence. Then, "Mum, that was about the hospital. That was different." I said, "How is it different?" He said, "Because this is about Owen. This is about you getting to spend time with your grandson." I said, "I wanted to spend time with my grandson at the hospital. I wanted to be there when he was born." Michael's voice got tight. He said, "Jessica needed her mum." I explained that. I said, "And now you need me." He said, "We're family. Family helps each other." I said, "I'm also concerned about the mortgage." His voice changed. He said, "What about the mortgage?" I said, "I'm still on the loan. I'd like to discuss refinancing so I can be removed." He said, "We can't refinance right now." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because we can't qualify. You know that. That's why you co-signed in the first place." I said, "I understand, but I need to protect myself financially. I'm 68 years old, Michael. I can't be responsible for a $300,000 loan indefinitely." He said, "So what are you saying?" I said, "I'm saying I'd like to work out a plan to get my name off the loan, either through refinancing when your credit improves or through some other arrangement." Michael said, "Are you seriously doing this right now? We're asking you to babysit your grandson, and you're threatening us about the mortgage." I said, "I'm not threatening anyone. I'm asking you to hold up your end of an agreement." He said, "We've been making the payments." I said, "Yeah, you're 60 days late." Silence. Then, "How do you know that?" I said, "I called the loan company. I have a right to know." Michael said, "You're checking up on us?" I said, "I'm protecting myself." He said, "This is unbelievable. You're really going to hold the house over our heads because you're mad about the hospital?" I said, "I'm not holding anything over your head. I'm asking for what we agreed to. You signed a promissory note. You said you'd pay me back for the nursery furniture. You said you'd get me off the loan as soon as you could. That was 2 years ago." Michael said, "We've had expenses. We had a baby." I said, "I understand that, but I also have expenses, and I have limits." He said, "So you're not going to help us?" I said, "I'm not going to babysit, and I need you to work with me on the loan." Michael said, "We can't afford to refinance. We can't afford daycare. We can't afford any of this without your help." I said, "That's not my problem, Michael." I heard him take a breath. Then he said, "I need to talk to Jessica." I said, "All right." He hung up. I sat at the kitchen table with the phone in my hand, and I waited to feel guilty. I waited to feel like I'd done something wrong, like I'd been too harsh, like I should call him back and apologize and say, yes, of course I'll babysit. Of course I'll help. But I didn't feel guilty. I felt clear. Sunday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I looked through the window and saw Michael's car in the driveway. I opened the door. Michael was standing there with Owen in a car seat. Jessica was behind him, her arms crossed. Michael said, "Can we come in?" I stepped aside. They came into the living room. Michael set the car seat on the floor. Owen was asleep, his face peaceful and small. Jessica sat on the couch. Michael stayed standing. I sat in the armchair and waited. Jessica said, "We need to talk about this situation." I said, "All right," she said. "You're being unreasonable. We're asking you to spend time with your grandson. Most grandmothers would be thrilled." I said, "Most grandmothers are allowed to be at the hospital when their grandchildren are born." Jessica's face went tight. She said, "I've already explained that. I needed my mother. It wasn't about you." I said, "It felt like it was about me." She said, "Well, you're making it about you now. Michael's your son. Owen is your grandson. We need help and you're refusing because your feelings got hurt." I looked at Michael. He was looking at the floor. I said, "I'm not refusing because my feelings got hurt. I'm refusing because I don't think you see me as family. I think you see me as someone who's useful when you need money or childcare." Jessica said, "That's not true." I said, "When was the last time you invited me to something that wasn't about asking me for help?" She didn't answer. I said, "The baby shower, the gender reveal, Michael's birthday. I've been left out of everything that mattered. And now you need something, and suddenly I'm family again." Michael said, "Mum, that's not fair." I said, "What's not fair about it?" He said, "We've been busy. We've had a lot going on." I said, "Too busy to let me stay at the hospital for an hour? Too busy to call me for 2 weeks after Owen was born? Too busy to include me in one photo at your birthday party?" Jessica stood up. She said, "This is ridiculous. We came here to work something out and you're just listing grievances." I said, "I'm explaining why I'm not available to babysit." She said, "Fine. Then we'll figure it out ourselves. But don't expect us to come running when you want to see Owen. You're making a choice here." I said, "So are you." Jessica picked up the car seat. Owen stirred but didn't wake. She looked at Michael and said, "Let's go." Michael looked at me. He said, "Mom, please, we really need you." I said, "I know you do, but I need something too. I need to be treated like I matter, not just when you need something." Jessica was already at the door. Michael followed her. He stopped in the doorway and said, "What about the mortgage?" I said, "I meant what I said. I need to be removed from the loan. If you can't refinance, we'll need to work out another solution." He said, "Like what?" I said, "I don't know yet, but I'm not going to keep being responsible for a house I don't own while being treated like I don't matter." Michael's face was pale. He said, "You're really doing this?" I said, "Yes." He left. I watched through the window as they put Owen in the car. As Jessica got in the passenger seat. As Michael backed out of the driveway, I closed the door. I went to the kitchen. I made tea. And I didn't cry. The letter came on a Tuesday, 10 days later. Certified mail. I had to sign for it. I opened it at the kitchen table. It was from a law office in Columbus, 3 pages on heavy paper with a letterhead that looked expensive. The letter said I was engaging in financial elder abuse. It said I was using my position as a co-signer to manipulate and control my son and daughter-in-law. It said I was threatening their housing security and their ability to care for their infant child. It said if I continued to pursue removal from the loan or demand repayment of the nursery furniture, they would seek a restraining order and pursue legal action for emotional distress and harassment. I read it twice. Then I called my lawyer. His name was David Chen. He'd handled Tom's estate when he died, and he'd helped me with the house purchase after. He was 60, methodical, and he didn't waste words. I read him the letter over the phone. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed. He said, "They don't have a case." I said, "Are you sure?" He said, "Lillian, you're a co-signer on a loan. You have every legal right to request removal from that loan. You have every legal right to request repayment of money you lent them. None of that is elder abuse. Elder abuse is when someone exploits or harms an elderly person. You're protecting yourself financially. That's the opposite of being exploited. I said, "What about the restraining order?" He said, "They can file for one. It won't be granted. You haven't threatened them. You haven't harassed them. You've made reasonable requests about a financial agreement. A judge will see this for what it is." I said, "What is it?" He said, "Desperation. They're scared and they're trying to intimidate you into backing down." I said, "What should I do?" He said, "Nothing. Don't respond to the letter. Don't contact them. If they file for a restraining order, we'll respond then. In the meantime, I'll draft a letter to the mortgage company formally requesting your removal from the loan. That'll start the clock. They'll have 90 days to refinance or make other arrangements." I said, "And if they can't?" He said, "Then they'll need to sell the house or find another co-signer, but that's their problem, not yours." I thanked him. I hung up. I put the letter in my file drawer with all the other documents. Then I sat at the table and thought about Michael. I thought about the little boy who used to climb into my lap when he was scared. The teenager who'd called me from college at 2 a.m. because he'd failed a test and thought his life was over. The young man who'd cried at his father's funeral and held my hand through the whole service. I thought about the man who'd sent me that letter. I didn't recognize him. 3 days later, Michael called. I almost didn't answer, but I did. He said, "Did you get the letter?" I said, "Yes." He said, "We're serious, Mum. If you keep pushing this, we'll file for the restraining order." I said, "Michael, I talked to my lawyer. You don't have a case." He said, "We'll see about that." I said, "Why are you doing this?" He said, "Why are you? You're trying to take our house." I said, "I'm trying to get my name off a loan I never should have been on in the first place. You promised you'd refinance as soon as you could. That was 2 years ago." He said, "We can't refinance, you know that." I said, "Then you need to find another solution. Sell the house, find another co-signer, but I'm not going to keep being responsible for your debt while you treat me like I don't exist." He said, "We don't treat you like you don't exist." I said, "You sent me away from the hospital. You didn't call me for 2 weeks. You only contacted me when you needed free childcare, and now you're threatening me with a restraining order because I won't do what you want." He said, "Jessica's the one who wanted to send the letter." I said, "But you signed it." Silence. Then he said, "What do you want from us?" I said, "I want my name off the loan. I want the $1,800 you owe me for the nursery furniture. And I want to be left alone." He said, "We can't pay you back right now." I said, "Then we'll work out a payment plan. But I'm not going to pretend the debt doesn't exist." He said, "And the loan?" I said, "My lawyer is sending a letter to the mortgage company. You'll have 90 days to refinance or make other arrangements." Michael's voice got hard. He said, "You're really going to do this? You're really going to force us to sell our house?" I said, "I'm not forcing you to do anything. I'm asking you to take responsibility for your own debt." He said, "We have a baby, Mum. Where are we supposed to go?" I said, "That's not my problem." He said, "How can you say that? He's your grandson." I said, "And you're my son, but you've made it very clear that I only matter when you need something from me. I'm done with that." He said, "Fine, then don't expect to see Owen. Ever." I felt that land in my chest, sharp and cold, but I kept my voice steady. I said, "That's your choice." He said, "It's your choice. You're choosing a house over your grandson." I said, "I'm choosing myself. For the first time in 2 years, I'm choosing myself." He hung up. I sat there with the phone in my hand, and I thought about Owen. I thought about his small face, his dark blue eyes, his hand curled around my finger. I thought about all the things I'd never get to teach him, all the stories I'd never get to tell him, all the moments I'd never get to share. I thought about the fact that I might never see him again. And I still didn't call Michael back. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling and thought about what I'd done. I thought about whether I was being selfish, whether I was being cruel, whether I was making a mistake I'd regret for the rest of my life. But then I thought about standing in that hospital parking lot in the rain. I thought about sitting at the back table at the baby shower. I thought about scrolling through 43 photos and not being in a single one. I thought about the way Michael had looked at me when he asked me to leave the hospital. The way he wouldn't meet my eyes. I thought about the way Jessica had said it wasn't personal, as if that made it hurt less. And I knew I wasn't making a mistake. I was making a boundary. For the first time in my life, I was saying, this is how far you can go. This is what I will accept. This is what I won't. It hurt. It was going to keep hurting, but it was the right thing to do. I got up, I made tea, I sat at the kitchen table in the dark and watched the sun come up. And I didn't change my mind. David's letter went out on Friday. By Monday, the mortgage company had contacted Michael. I knew because Jessica called me. I'd never gotten a call from Jessica before. Not once in the 4 years she'd been with Michael. Every communication had gone through him. Every message filtered through his voice. Now she was calling me directly. I answered. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Hello, Jessica." She said, "The mortgage company called Michael. They said you're requesting removal from the loan. They said we have 90 days to refinance, or they'll require full payment." I said, "That's correct." She said, "We can't refinance. You know we can't refinance." I said, "Then you'll need to find another solution." Her voice went high and tight. She said, "There is no other solution. My parents won't co-sign. Michael's credit isn't good enough on his own. We'd have to sell the house." I said, "I understand that's difficult." She said, "Difficult? We have a 2-month-old baby. We can't just pack up and move. Do you have any idea what you're doing to us?" I said, "I'm protecting myself financially. I never should have been on that loan in the first place." She said, "You offered. Michael didn't force you." I said, "You're right. I offered because he's my son and I wanted to help him, but I also expected to be treated like family." She said, "You are family." I said, "Then why wasn't I allowed to stay at the hospital?" She said, "I've explained that. I needed my mother." I said, "And I needed to be there for my son and my grandson, but you decided I didn't matter." She said, "This isn't about the hospital. This is about you being vindictive because you didn't get your way." I said, "This is about me being tired of being useful only when you need something." She said, "That's not true. We care about you." I said, "When was the last time you invited me to something that wasn't about asking for help?" She didn't answer. I said, "The baby shower, the gender reveal, Michael's birthday. I've been left out of everything. And when I finally said no to something, you threatened me with a restraining order." She said, "That was Michael's lawyer's idea." I said, "But you signed the letter." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What do you want? Do you want us to beg? Do you want us to apologize? What will it take for you to stop this?" I said, "I want my name off the loan. I want the $1,800 you owe me, and I want to be treated with respect." She said, "We can't pay you back right now. We're barely making the mortgage as it is." I said, "Then we'll work out a payment plan." She said, "And the loan?" I said, "You have 90 days to figure it out." She said, "And if we can't?" I said, "Well, then you'll have to sell." Her voice changed. It got cold and sharp. She said, "If you do this, you'll never see Owen again. I mean it. We'll move away. We'll make sure you never find us. You'll never know your grandson." I felt that threat settle in my chest. I felt the weight of it, the cruelty of it, but I kept my voice steady. I said, "That's your choice, Jessica, but it won't change mine." She said, "You're willing to lose your grandson over this?" I said, "I'm willing to protect myself. You're the one who's willing to use a baby as a weapon." She said, "You're a bitter old woman. Michael was right about you." I said, "What did Michael say about me?" She said, that you've been difficult ever since his father died, that you expect everyone to cater to you because you're lonely, that you use guilt to manipulate him. I felt something crack inside me. Not break, just crack. A small fissure in something I'd been holding together for a long time. I said, "Is that what he told you?" She said, "Yes." And he was right. I said, "Then I guess it's good that I'm removing myself from your lives." She said, "You're making a huge mistake. When you're old and alone and you have no one, don't come crying to us." I said, "I won't." She hung up. I sat at the kitchen table with the phone in my hand, and I thought about what she'd said, about what Michael had said about me. Difficult, lonely, manipulative. Was that how he saw me? Was that what he'd been telling Jessica all this time? I thought about the years after Tom died, the years when I'd been learning how to be alone, how to live in a smaller house, how to fill the hours that used to be filled with someone else. I'd called Michael more often then. I'd invited him to dinner more often. I'd asked him to help me with things I probably could have done myself. Had that been manipulation? Or had that just been grief? I didn't know anymore. I got up. I went to the file drawer. I pulled out the folder with all the documents, the mortgage papers, the promissory note, the letter from Jessica and Michael's lawyer. I spread them out on the table and looked at them. These were facts. These were things I could prove. I'd co-signed a loan. I'd lent them money. They'd promised to pay me back. They hadn't. Those were facts. But there were other facts too. Facts I couldn't prove with documents. I'd been excluded. I'd been dismissed. I'd been treated like I only mattered when I was useful. And now I was being told I was difficult and manipulative for saying no. I thought about calling Michael. I thought about asking him if it was true, if that's really what he thought of me, if that's what he'd been telling Jessica all along. But I didn't call, because I realized it didn't matter. It didn't matter if he thought I was difficult. It didn't matter if he thought I was lonely or manipulative or bitter. What mattered was that I knew who I was. I was a woman who'd spent 40 years organizing information and helping people find what they needed. I was a woman who'd loved her husband and raised her son and tried her best to be kind and useful and good. I was a woman who'd been taken advantage of, and I was a woman who was finally saying no. I put the documents back in the folder. I put the folder back in the drawer, and I went to bed. The next morning I called David. I said, "They're threatening to keep me from seeing my grandson if I don't back down." He said, "That's not legally enforceable. Grandparents' rights are complicated in Ohio, but threatening to withhold access as retaliation for a financial dispute doesn't look good for them." I said, "I don't want to fight them for visitation rights. I just want to be done." He said, "Then we stay the course. The mortgage company has given them 90 days. After that, it's out of your hands." I said, "What if they can't sell the house in time?" He said, "Then the bank will foreclose. But that's not your responsibility. You didn't create this situation. You're just refusing to keep enabling it." I said, "It doesn't feel like refusing to enable. It feels like destroying my son's life." David was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Lillian, I've known you for 8 years. You're one of the most reasonable, careful people I've ever met. If you're doing this, it's because you've been pushed past what any reasonable person should have to tolerate. Don't let them make you doubt that." I said, "Thank you," he said. "Call me if anything changes." I hung up. I went to the garden. I pulled weeds. I watered the tomatoes. I planted basil and oregano in the herb bed by the back door. And I waited. 90 days felt like a long time. It felt like forever. But I'd waited this long. I could wait a little longer. The call came on day 73. Michael, not Jessica. His voice was different, smaller. He said, "Mum, we need to talk." I said, "All right." He said, "Can I come over?" I said, "Yes." He came alone. No Jessica. No Owen. Just Michael, standing on my front porch in jeans and a wrinkled shirt, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. I let him in. We sat in the living room. I didn't offer him coffee. He said, "We're selling the house." I said, "I'm sorry." He said, "Are you?" I didn't answer that. He said, "We can't refinance. We tried everywhere. No one will approve us without a co-signer, and no one will co-sign. Jessica's parents said no. Her sister said no. We're out of options." I said, "When do you have to be out?" He said, "We have to close in 60 days. We found a buyer. It's a family with 3 kids. They love the house." I said, "Where will you go?" He said, "We're renting a townhouse in Westerville. It's smaller, 2 bedrooms, but it's what we can afford." I said, "That sounds reasonable." He looked at me. His eyes were red. He said, "This is all your fault." I said, "No, Michael, it's not." He said, "You forced us to sell. You knew we couldn't refinance. You knew this would happen." I said, "I asked you to take responsibility for your own debt. That's not the same thing as forcing you to sell." He said, "We had a home. Owen had a nursery. We had a yard. Now we're going to be crammed into a townhouse with paper-thin walls and no space." I said, "You'll still have each other. You'll still have Owen." He said, "Don't act like you care about Owen. You've never even tried to see him." I said, "You told me I'd never see him again if I didn't back down. I believed you." He said, "That was Jessica. She was upset." I said, "You were on the phone too. You didn't disagree with her." He looked away. He said, "She's been really stressed." I said, "So have I." He said, "It's not the same. You're not the one losing your house." I said, "I'm the one who lost my son." He looked at me then, really looked at me. He said, "What's that supposed to mean?" I said, "It means I don't recognize you anymore. The Michael I raised wouldn't have sent me away from the hospital. He wouldn't have ignored me for 2 weeks. He wouldn't have threatened me with a lawyer because I asked him to keep a promise." He said, "Jessica wanted to send the letter. I told you that." I said, "But you signed it. You let her speak for you. You let her decide that I didn't matter." He said, "She's my wife." I said, "And I'm your mother." He said, "So I'm supposed to choose you over her?" I said, "I'm not asking you to choose. I'm asking you to see me, to treat me like I matter, not just when you need something." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Jessica said you called her a bad person." I said, "I didn't." He said, "She said you told her she was using Owen as a weapon." I said, "She threatened to make sure I never saw him again. What would you call that?" He didn't answer. I said, "Michael, I don't think Jessica is a bad person. I think she's young and scared and she's protecting her family the only way she knows how. But I also think she doesn't see me as part of that family. And I think you've let her treat me that way because it's easier than standing up to her." He said, "That's not fair." I said, "Well, what's not fair about it?" He said, "You don't know what it's like. She's the mother of my child. I have to live with her. I have to make her happy." I said, "And what about me?" He said, "You're my mother. You're supposed to understand." I said, "I'm supposed to understand that I don't matter as much as she does." He said, "That's not what I meant." I said, "Then what did you mean?" He put his head in his hands. He said, I don't know anymore." We sat there in silence. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. I could hear a car drive past outside. Finally, Michael said, "Jessica said you told her I called you difficult and manipulative." I said, "What?" She said you told her I've been difficult since your father died, that I use guilt to manipulate you. He looked up. He said, "I never said that." I said, "She said you did." He said, "I didn't, I swear. I told her you'd been lonely since Dad died, that you called more often, that you needed more help, but I never said you were manipulative." I said, "But you think I'm difficult?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Sometimes, yeah." I said, "Because I said no to babysitting?" He said, "Because you're making us sell our house." I said, "I'm not making you do anything. I'm asking you to take responsibility for a loan you agreed to. That's not difficult. That's reasonable." He said, "It doesn't feel reasonable. It feels like punishment." I said, "For what?" He said, "For the hospital, for not calling you enough, for not including you in things, for all of it." I said, "It's not punishment, Michael. It's a boundary. I can't keep being responsible for your debt while you treat me like I'm invisible. He said, I don't treat you like you're invisible. I said, you sent me away from the hospital. You didn't call me for 2 weeks after Owen was born. You only contacted me when you needed free childcare. How is that not treating me like I'm invisible? He said, I was overwhelmed. We were overwhelmed. We had a newborn. We weren't thinking straight. I said, and now? He said, now we're losing our house. I said, and whose fault is that? He looked at me, he said, yours. I said, no, Michael, it's yours. You took out a loan you couldn't afford. You asked me to co-sign because you knew I'd say yes. You promised you'd refinance, and you didn't. You promised you'd pay me back for the nursery furniture, and you didn't. You made choices, and now you're facing the consequences of those choices. That's not my fault. He stood up. He said, I came here to tell you we're selling the house. I thought maybe you'd feel bad, maybe you'd change your mind, but you don't care, do you? I said, I care very much, but I'm not going to keep sacrificing myself to make your life easier. He said, fine. Then I guess we're done here. I said, I guess we are. He walked to the door. He stopped with his hand on the knob. He said, Jessica was right about you. I said, what did she say? He said, that you're bitter, that you've been bitter since Dad died and you want everyone else to be miserable too. I felt that land. I felt it settle in my chest, cold and sharp. I said, is that what you think? He said, I don't know what I think anymore. He left. I sat in the living room for a long time after he was gone. I sat there and thought about what he'd said, about whether it was true. Was I bitter? Was I trying to make everyone else miserable? I didn't think so, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe grief had changed me in ways I couldn't see, or maybe I'd just finally learned to say no. I got up. I went to the kitchen. I made dinner. I ate alone, the way I always did. And I tried not to think about the fact that I might never see Michael again. 3 months later, I got a letter in the mail, just a regular envelope with no return address. Inside was a photo of Owen. He was bigger now, 4 months old, sitting in someone's lap. On the back, in Michael's handwriting, I'm sorry, just that, nothing else. I put the photo in a drawer, not on the refrigerator, not on the mantel, just in a drawer with the other documents. I didn't call him. I didn't write back. The house sold. David called to tell me my name was officially off the loan. Michael and Jessica had moved to the townhouse in Westerville. I said thank you. I hung up. The garden helped. It was late spring now, almost summer, and everything was coming back to life. The tomatoes were flowering, the basil was thick and green, the marigolds were bright and defiant. I spent my mornings out there, hands in the soil, watching things grow. Margaret came by most afternoons. We'd sit on the back porch and talk about books, shows, nothing important. She never asked about Michael. One afternoon, my neighbour Patricia knocked on my door. She had a daughter who'd just had a baby. Patricia said, would you be willing to babysit sometimes? Just a few hours here and there? My daughter's going back to work. We'd pay you, of course. I almost said no, but then I thought about Owen, about the 10 minutes I'd held him. I said, I'd be happy to. The baby's name was Sophie, 3 months old, dark hair, dark eyes. Her mother Amy was a nurse, 28, grateful for the help. I babysat Sophie on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4 hours each day. It wasn't much, but it was something. Sophie didn't replace Owen. She was her own person, and I was just someone who helped take care of her. But holding her helped. It helped me remember I was still capable of being useful in a way that felt chosen, not obligated. Amy started calling me Miss Lillian, not Grandma, not family, but not invisible either. I joined a book club at the library, 6 women, all around my age, meeting every other Wednesday. I started volunteering on Fridays, helping with the archive project. It felt good to use my skills for something that mattered. I kept my keys on a hook by the front door now, my house key, my car key, the spare key to Patricia's house, keys that meant access, trust, a place in the world. One evening in late June, I was in the garden when my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but I did. It was Michael. He said, Mom. I said, hello, Michael. He said, I wanted to make sure you got the photo. I said, I did, thank you. He said, he's getting big. I said, he looks beautiful. Silence. Then Michael said, I've been thinking about what you said, about boundaries, about taking responsibility. I said, and? He said, you were right. I let Jessica make decisions I should have pushed back on. I took you for granted. I'm sorry. I said, I know. He said, can I call you sometimes? Not to ask for anything, just to talk. I said, you can try. He hung up. A week later, I got another envelope, this time with a return address. Inside was a check for $300 and a note. First payment, more to come. M. I put the check in my wallet. I put the note in the drawer with the photo. And I kept going. I kept babysitting Sophie. I kept going to book club. I kept volunteering at the library. I kept working in my garden, planting things that would bloom next year. I made a new blanket, yellow yarn, the same pattern. This one was for Sophie. I gave it to Amy on a Thursday afternoon and she cried and said it was beautiful. I didn't know if Owen still had his blanket, but Sophie had hers, and that was enough. One morning in early July, I was sitting on the back porch with my coffee, watching the sun come up over the garden. The tomatoes were heavy with fruit. The basil was ready to harvest. The marigolds were still blooming, bright and stubborn. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, the woman standing in the hospital parking lot in the rain, holding her keys, feeling like she didn't matter. I thought about the woman I was now, still holding keys, but different ones. Keys to a life I'd chosen, not a life I'd been assigned. I didn't know if Michael and I would ever be close again. I didn't know if I'd ever meet Owen, ever hold him again, ever tell him about his grandfather. But I knew I'd done the right thing. I'd chosen myself. I'd set a boundary. I'd said, this is how far you can go, and I'd survived it. I finished my coffee. I went inside. I hung my keys on the hook by the door, and I started my day.